Hello and welcome to another episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. Today I'm doing yet another part in my series where I'm doing all the diorama bits and pieces for Godzilla figures. So I wasn't really planning on doing this episode, and then I came across a little cool tip on how to make water for a very simple and cheap way with a material that I actually already have on hand. So I was going to hold back on doing water till a later episode because I'm planning this really big diorama of lots of rivers and stuff, but I just couldn't resist, and I kind of came up with a cool little mini diorama that we can do that'll work perfectly with our, Godzilla figures or our Gamera figures and stuff. So what I'm going to be doing in, this is going to be a two-parter by the way, but this part we're going to be doing rivers and bridges. In the next episode, which will be working on the same little diorama bit, we're going to be making a factory, like a sort of either like a power plant or a factory or some sort of industrial complex. So, getting to the rivers part, what I found out was a cool little trick, which is using epoxy glue as a water effect. I was actually gonna use clear silicon, which you get in like hardware stores, like in those gap filler guns type things, which you can also get those pretty cheap. And I heard that one's really good. But I also just heard that you can use epoxy glue, which is fantastic because this stuff's really cheap. Like you can see, this amount here only costs $2. I think it only is about that full, so it's not a super big amount, but for $2 for like a clear resin that we can use for casting like a nice water texture, you can't really beat that. So I'm gonna just cut out sort of like a nice sized base, because remember, I want there to be a little river here, and I want there to be room for a factory, and maybe on the other side of the river we can have like a nice road with some like decorations and stuff that I can put in there later. We want to cut out some more bits of foam board to use as ground later on, because we're going to be raising the level of the ground a little bit. So I'm just kind of trying to work it out in my head. I'll actually show you. I did a rough sketch of like a concept art for this project. I mean, I'm not going to do it in this way, but you kind of got the idea where you got like this factory here. I'm going to have these cool pipes going in the water. I put those in because, bendy straws would be perfect for these little pipes that go in the water. And you got that bridge over there in like the water. So it's probably not going to be in this shape, or the factory's going to probably look very different and all that stuff. But it's just kind of to show you what I'm thinking for this little industrial area. We can also have some like industrial warehouse buildings around here and stuff like that. It will look very cool amongst our kaiju. So I think I'm going to probably cut this like roughly in half, and that should be a good size to work with. So I think I'm going to have like a double road here. So we're going to kind of draw it in. So I probably skipped through a little bit of that for you guys because I was just drawing and scribbling all over this thing, trying to come up with a good way of doing things. So this is our river. So this is going to be a little bridge here, and this is going to be our main road on the opposite side of the factory. So you got roads with the cars going down here. Then there's a little bridge that we're going to be building over here, over our river. And this is where we're going to have our whole factory area. And this river, it has a little water channel here because this is where we're going to have pipes coming out from the river going into some sort of a concrete bunker or something where, this is going to be like where cooling water will be sucked up through pumps to be used in the factory for, whatever the hell they need cooling water for. If it's a power plant, then they definitely need, most of them built on the side of the ocean or rivers to especially do that, so they suck up water to cool them. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to get another piece of this foam. So we're going to layer on top. Alright guys, once you've drawn up your design for what you want for your land masses, what you're going to do is you're just going to cut them out with a nice good sharp scalpel knife. So when using what's it called, foam board, I recommend using as sharp a knife as you can. Mine's just kind of okay, but I've used really bad ones in the past, and when I first started using foam board, and I was really displeased with the results. I was like, why do people use foam board? It's so horrible to work with. But then it turned out it was just my knife's fault. So if you're having trouble using foam board, it's probably your knife. So I'm just doing like the rough cuts on the straight lines, and then the curved ones I'll spend a little more time on in a bit. Alright, so we got our two pieces out. Now what we've got to do is we've got to arrange them on our base piece. So this one will go here. I got my glue finally, and all you got to do is glue it down. It's just that simple. So what next? Well, I want this area to have the little thing where the straws will be coming out of. So what I want here is I want a little raised sort of a bit of material that's going to be sort of like a little bunker for those. So kind of thinking how to build it. Do I actually attach a little box, or do I just lay a foam? So I'm probably leaning towards layering foam at the moment. So for the purposes of this, that's what I'm going to do. So there we go, our first little bit of our display base. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure everything is still glued in its proper area, because stuff tends to shift around while PVA is drying. It's a good thing about PVA, it doesn't dry fast, so you can move stuff around, but it can also be a little annoying. So we're going to leave this to dry. Actually, just before we leave it to dry, what I'm going to do is, for my roads, I like to put little bits of cardboard around the edges of them, just so they are sort of around the roads is a little separated from the cardboard. So, but here's a random piece of cardboard. You could just use paper, but I prefer something a little thicker. This is practically paper, actually, so you know, it doesn't really matter. Then what I'm just going to do is, just on this side, just this corner is going to be easy. This other shape here might be a little tricky. Join those two together and rule it off. I mean, cut it off. Alright guys, so I've got everything down. There's the little cardboard bits there just to raise that ground slightly. They're not perfectly in there, but it's good enough for what we're going to do. And you know, I've got the little foam bit here. Again, probably not the best way that I did this to do this, but trust me, we can make this thing work, so don't worry about that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to let it dry. Just make sure nothing moves around when you let it dry, because I'm going to put something heavy on this. So just make sure it doesn't warp it or you know, do something bad in any way. Alright, so this is pretty much glued on now. I'm filming this, it's night now, so the picture will be a little different. You might be able to see better or worse. I don't know, hard to tell, just different, I guess. But what we're going to do now is we're going to start mixing up our gap filler in order to fill up the edges here and make them look, you know, not like they're bits of foam board, but like they're actually the edges of a river. So I'm going to get a gap filler. I've talked about this in almost every episode of this so far, so I'm not going to go through it again, but and we just scoop up some of this gap filler and we're going to mix it with the paint. Again, you don't really have to, because we're going to paint this, paint over this, but I just like working with this in a gray color as opposed to the white, because that way, in case we chip the paint later, we're not going to have the problem of just having white gap filler. So now the process is as simple as just filling in these areas here. So it's very rough at the moment, but you get the idea of what I'm doing. And you can do whatever texturing you like in this. I'm going to make it pretty smooth because I want this to be more like a concrete sort of riverside texture, or something like that. This isn't like a dirt texture, because if you were doing that, it would be sort of a very different looking thing. Hey guys, so this is now pretty much set. At least it's very touch dry. I've left it for a few hours, And just before I go to bed, I'm going to see about finishing this off to a stage where it's ready to be primed, and you know, so we can finally get that river in, because I really want to get that river in. So what I'll do in the meantime is we'll get to doing the pipes in here. I just got some nice fresh straws, and I'm gonna just kind of roughly measure them so they're at the same length, and then I'm gonna kind of cut them, leaving about, I don't know, 8 millimeters on this side. And they flew everywhere, but that's okay. So now that we've got those ready, what we can do is we just make sure they're not all squished like this one is, so pop them back out. And then we're gonna bend them at a 90-degree angle. Now, when I do this, I just want to make sure that they're sort of evenly bent. Because I don't want it to just sort of, because they have this little concertina pattern, I want it to roughly be like a subtle bend in them. So there's one that's good. It's got a nice, sort of a nice rounded curve to it. I'm going to do the same to this side, to this one. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to attach this to this somehow. So I'm thinking, not really sure how to attach it to this wall quite yet, but the way I'm going to attach it to the ground here, and probably the same way I'm going to attach it to this, is I'm just going to get little matchsticks. You could use toothpicks that are already sharp, but I'm just going to get this matchstick. This whole base is made of foam board, means we can just stab stuff into it and it should hold. So that's what I'm going to do with these. I'm just going to make little stabby sticks, and they're just going to kind of guide our little pipes here, because what I'm going to do afterwards is I'm going to mix up some more gap filler, some colored gap filler, and I'm going to slop it around the bottom of these, so that way they'll be, you know, secured really nicely. Right, so now our pipes are in place. What we can do is we can get our gap filler and just fill it up just underneath them. I'm going to do that in a second. I'm going to get to my bridge first. So first step I'll do is I'll actually figure out where whatever pillars we're going to put in will go. So this is kind of going to be going from here to here, and it's going to be raised a little bit in the middle. So I'm going to bend this cardboard. What I need to do is I was thinking about putting 2 little barriers up on these sides, and then 2 in the middle. 2 little pillars, I mean, not barriers. So I'm probably going to just go with matchsticks. I'm going to put, you know, 2 right up against here, and 2 up the middle, and I mean 1 up the middle. If I put any more, I feel like it'll be a little too much for this small bridge, although it might make the scale look a little bigger if we have 4 as opposed to 3. Yeah, I'm going to go with the 4. What I'm going to do is just by eye make some little holes, something like that. Then we're going to stick our matchsticks in. There we go. They're not perfect, but you know, that's fine. And the same thing we'll do on this side. I'm going to not worry about the tips of these for the moment. I'm going to worry about those later, because I'm not entirely sure how I'm gonna deal with those. What we're really going to be focusing on right now is these pipes. So I want to grab them and get the bottoms of these and cover them in gap filler, sort of the same way we were doing with that bridge. What that's going to do is that's going to basically act as our glue. So we don't need the rest of that gap filler. I'm just going to smooth it out there. That should be enough to hold it in place, and once we paint it up, it should look really good. Alright guys, so this is still not dry. I only cut away for about 2-3 minutes, but I just had an idea. So these little gaps here between these pipes that has all the, like, you know, the really poorly cut foam board, I figured out a quick way that I can, you know, cover those up for what we're going to do later. So I'm just going to get some of this paper that we used for this sort of thin card that we used for the roadway here on the side of the road. And I'm just going to cut some strips of this. The reason I'm doing this now is because the bottom of these is going to be in the water. what's going to be the water, and I want that to be done before we do before we actually put the water effect in. So it's kind of important to do this step first. So there we go. It's not, you know, perfectly covered up, but I think for this display that'll work just fine. And you know that we're going to go back around this little bunker area later on in the future and put a whole cardboard sort of shell around it anyway. Alright, so it is now the next morning, and as you can hopefully see, this is all dried up. These are all patched. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start off by I'm gonna start off by painting these pipes. But what we're gonna do now is all these edges along here, we are gonna paint them sort of like a light gray color to be like a little, you know, concrete edge. And then we're gonna go in and we're gonna, you know, color in the water, which I'll show you how to do that. So with this color, I'm also gonna paint all these little wooden posts here. They're going to be concrete pillars, basically. So I've just finished painting all of this gray. Like I said, you don't have to rush ahead and do all of this gray, but since I was already painting, I had the leftover paint. That's what I did. So now what we're going to do is we're going to paint in the river. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to have to sort of do sort of a gradient effect. So it's going to be the darkest down the middle and lighter towards the edges. And I'm just kind of thinking what colors, and since I live in Brisbane and we have a great big river here, and it's pretty much like a gray-green color, I'm going to do something similar to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up sort of a brown in our palette here. And that's going to be the color of the middle of the river. Basically it's going to be like a dark browny gray color. So as you can see, I mixed up sort of this weird sort of greenish color. I'm just sort of experimenting because I'm not really sure what will work and what won't, so I'm hoping this will be a good start. And we're just kind of sort of start blending it a little bit with that gray edge we have. Alright, so now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to mix in slightly darker color, aim to get it a little bit more brown this time. Gonna keep the paint fairly wet for this. So there I got that slightly more browny orangey color in, and now I'm going to start darkening it. Alright guys, so I left this to dry for just a tiny little bit, and now it should be all ready for the next step. So just make sure the camera's nice and focused. What we're going to do now is we're going to get our epoxy glue. So I'm really curious about this epoxy glue because I've never used it before. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to get some tape, because we need to tape off the ends here, because otherwise we're going to have this stuff leaking all over the place. And now comes the moment of truth. So I've got this here, and we've got to open this somehow. So, alright, so I've finally cut those off, and now what we're literally just going to do is just make sure that tape is still very much holding intact on both sides. I'm a little nervous. Here goes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to press this syringe, and in theory, this stuff should pour out evenly on both sides. It's like this. It's going to be a little tricky through here, but here it goes. Whoops, made a little mess to the side there, but hopefully it's not going to be too bad. And get it all around here. But we've got a lot of glue poured in around here. Now what we need to do is we need to mix this up really well. I'm going to get a paddle pop stick. I'm going to mix this. Try not to get too many bubbles in this though. What I actually need to do is I don't have this on a flat surface, so I'm not actually going to leave it on this table. I just realized that's a very important thing. Because the table that I'm filming this on actually has a big lean to it. kind of helps the camera see everything I'm doing, but at the same time not good if I want this to level flat. But you know, it's getting there, definitely. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. So I'm gonna put this aside on a flat surface, making sure it's actually a flat surface. And I'm gonna leave this to cure. So I'm not really sure exactly how long that'll be. Alright guys, so I've left this to set overnight. It actually pretty much set yesterday, just by the evening, except for not entirely. The kind of result I've got with this, and I think it's because I didn't mix it quite well enough, so in future, if I am using this technique, I might try mixing it in a separate container really well and then pouring it in. Hopefully that'll give me enough working time still. So it's got some, you know, sticky little puddles and around the back here, and I don't, you know, unless I mix more of the glue into it, that's really not going to set. What I could do is I could order in buy some more glue and put another layer in and all that, but since I'm feeling a little lazy and we need to do something to add texture to this anyway, as you can see, it's just got that sort of mostly flat glassy finish, which does look nice. I hope on camera that river is coming out somewhat convincing. Hopefully it'll look even better once it's all finished when the bridge is put in and everything. You can kind of see it there. So, you know, this glue works. It's just I needed to do a better job of it. But, you know, it's kind of there. In person, you don't really see it that much. And when we do this next step, which is we're going to be adding waves to this thing, because, you know, this is going to be a pretty big river, because we're going to have our Godzilla or Gamera figures. So anyways, whenever I say Godzilla figures, I pull out this Gamera, because this is just the one that I happen to have on hand near where I film all the time, at the moment at least. But, you know, this monster will be 50 meters tall, so you can see this river is going to be fairly big, so it's going to have waves, even if it's, you know, an inland river. It's going to have little ripples all over it, so I'm not going to have this, like, smooth, glossy finish, and plus I need to do something about all the wet, sticky spots. So I'm gonna try out this for making those little textured waves. This is clear silicon. This is in the form of a glue, but you can get it as just like a gap filler type silicon that comes in the same sort of tubes that gap filler does. And this is this stuff would be, as far as water effects goes, this stuff is fairly inexpensive. So it's the other alternative besides this stuff, and this one should cure up nice and dry, even over the gloopy stuff here. So I'm hoping that the gloopy stuff will, in the future, cure. I did a little test. Hopefully it comes out. This side, oh man, it's really hard to see. But this bit here is a bit of that silicon, and you can see I've kind of got a little bit of texture there. It's not very apparent. Next to it here, I've got nail polish, so there's a bit of clear nail polish. That was another option I was playing around with. It's another fairly inexpensive way to get a nice sort of enamel gloss over stuff, just using clear nail polish. But the silicon, you know, it actually has a little texture to it, so I have a few methods that I'm going to try to add texture to it. We could use a palette knife to sort of do the same sort of texturing that we did at the very bottom of the river with just the gap filler. I could use a paddle pop stick, which is a common method. A lot of people use paintbrushes to, you know, do this stuff and go like that and stipple it, and that gives like a nice water texture. I'm not going to, because I don't want to wreck my brushes, because why? So I made this little tool that's kind of like a brush, except for it's made of a straw that I've cut up the tip to have little bristles. So that might be a cool little disposable tool. But I think I'm mainly going to go with this paddle pop stick still. So, and what we're going to do is, hope I don't ruin my river, because I've never tried this technique. So I'm just going to apply a little bit here. Now what I'm going to try and do is get the popsicle stick, smooth it out over this place. And this is also good because you can make this water effect entirely out of the clear silicon, which is what I was originally intending to do until I discovered that you could use epoxy glue. So it's already there. You can see there's some ripples going in there, but we want it, because this is a big sort of what's it called? Big river, and we're working in a very small scale. I'm just gonna pull up like this all over it, and that's actually creating a nice sort of wavy texture. It's sinking into itself. Just make sure it doesn't get too stringy, because this stuff kind of dries quick, so it can get a little bit stringy. Here's what our water looks like now after we added that silicone texturing on the top, and it's been left to dry for a while. It dried pretty quickly, but I've left it for well overnight. And I did have some issues with this area still being a bit wet from the epoxy glue not curing properly, so I kind of just, I didn't know what else to do, so I just, even though even the silicone didn't quite cover it properly, so I just got some clear nail polish and I covered this entire area with it, so now even the areas that are a little soft are at least touch dry. So it's not too bad actually now. But yeah, that's what I've done, and here's the water effect. Now the silicone, it looks a little more lumpy than wavy, unfortunately, but it doesn't look too bad. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna build a bridge. So I want this bridge to be here, and what we gotta do is we want it to be slightly curved. In order to do that, I want to put like two sides on this bridge, and I'm gonna make those out of just a piece of cardboard like this, which is just like a cardboard envelope that. So I've just cut out a usable chunk of cardboard from that envelope, and what I'm going to do is I've just got a little plate here. I'm going to put this on the cardboard, then we're going to get a pencil, and this is going to give us a radius for our bridge. So here we go. I didn't make these quite perfect, but you know, they're approximately the same size and definitely the same curve to them. So now we have a piece of cardboard like this, which we can use as our slightly curved bridge. So that fits really well in here. But we have these two cardboard archways, and now what we need to do, we need to throw our ruler off the table because that's going to be helpful. What we need to do is now we need to assemble this bridge. So we gotta basically glue everything together so that these archways hopefully would match up with our bridge. And then we go. So we got both sides of our bridge now attached. And what we're gonna do with this is we will attach this to our existing bridge. So what I'm going to do now is I need to trim off these pillars. So at the moment they're obviously way too high, and we don't want to have like a big canopy over our roof like this. There you can see I removed the tips of all of these little sticks. Some of them are a little lower than others, so I didn't do quite a perfect job, but it's not really a big deal. The basic way I did this was I just sort of scored the edges around them with a knife all the way around, and then I kind of broke it off, and it seemed to leave a clean enough cut for what we want. But you can see now we have a nice cool little bridge here. It's a little hard to get in focus, but also bear in mind there will be a road going down the middle of it. What we're going to do now is we're going to get a little gap filler, and these sort of edges of this thick cardboard here we want to smooth over, so when we see it, it's not this big jarring giant gap there. I also pinned down both sides with glue, as well as all these little sticks as best I could. So there we go. I've got a basic slope made there. It's not perfectly smooth, but you know, it's alright. So what I'm going to do now is this little area with these pipes that's going into the water here, I want to sort of put a little, encase it in cardboard basically, so it doesn't have all this this layer of this foam board structure showing. So I'm going to use the same cardboard that we used for the bridge edges, and just sort of measure it out and build a little structure. So, and there we go. Now our structure is covered, and we'll paint that later, and we'll put some cool stuff back in this little gap here. Alright, so as you can see here, I've gone ahead and painted the bridge up nice and gray, and I've touched up all the paint on this thing, and I've painted this little house that I put together, which is just, you know, cardboard around our little structure, and now that's all painted. So we're ready for the finishing touches. So what we're gonna do is I printed off some new road, and with this road we're gonna fit it in here. So I've had to trim down the edges of my road quite a lot because I underestimated the width of my road, but it does fit in here really nicely now. So all I've got to do is line it up where I want it to start and finish, and you know, this little road will mostly take up that whole little piece there. Right, so you get a pencil. I'm going to flip it upside down, draw a line across here, and do the same thing on this side. I don't know if you can see, because again my camera's really making everything very overexposed today, so I'm very sorry, but there's indeed a line across here and a line across here. And there we go. So now we have a piece of road that fits nicely across here, and all we're going to do with our other piece of road is we're just going to glue it down on across the middle of our bridge, something like that. Thank you guys so much for checking out this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and you liked the way this all turned out. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode and you liked the way this project turned out. And yeah, so I know the water's not perfect, but it's my very first ever attempt at a water effect, and I think for a first attempt, it's okay. So I'm enjoying the way it looks, and I'll yeah, hopefully it'll look really nice in the photos that I take a bit later on. So in our next episode, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building a factory complex that is going to be around this side. One thing which I might do between filming that at the start of that episode and the end of this one is I might glue these little these are the little things off of like sushi soy sauce. Like you get the little tiny plastic fish shaped bottles that have the soy sauce in them for sushi, and they come with like these little lids. I'm thinking of putting some in here to represent like little pumps or something that would be effectively driving, like whatever these tubes in here are doing, these would be part of that system, and it would be a cool way to top this little building here. So I'm going to glue those down. And yeah, so that's what it'll look like at the start of the next episode. Hopefully this road will stay down on this bridge. I'll have to keep nudging it to just making sure it's working well. But yeah, other than that, this is finished. So thanks so much guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any ideas or comments and stuff, don't hesitate to leave them in the description below. Not the description, the comments below. I'll have some cool links and stuff in the description. As always, I'll have links to where I have all the photos available on the Atomic Vinyl Reviews Facebook page. The photos of like the building textures and these road textures. So if you watch my other videos, you'll know all about that. So yeah. See ya, guys. May all your vinyl be irradiated vinyl. Over and out.